A very warm welcome to yet another episode, I should say a fresh episode of Aging Gracefully, our talk show for evergreens. It's been more than a year now since we've been having this program on air, and we want to thank the many people who tune in, who participate, who even are in dialogue and in conversation with us, not just those in the studio with us, but even those who watch from across the world. And during the course of this time, we've spoken on various topics and themes relevant to our growing and our aging years. We've looked at loneliness, isolation. We've looked at how it has affected our health. We've looked at caregivers. But today, we're going to take a topic that has not been around for a very long time, but we begin to realize how important and how necessary it is. It's something that more of us should become aware of, and even more than that, to get and make the best use of something for that. So to address this topic, we have a very distinguished panel here to help us unravel some of the points that are going to be enlightening with regard to palliative care. To my right is Dr. Carolin Elizabeth George. We are happy to have you. This is our first time here, and we want you to feel most welcome.
Thank you, Father.
She is specialized in community health, and in a particular way, her expertise, among other things, has been in palliative care. Right now, she heads the department in Baptist Hospital here in Bangalore with regard to community health, the research division, and of course, palliative care. And this work of hers, together with her team, of course, reaches out not just to people in the city of Bangalore, but also to the rural areas of Chikbalapur district as well. I'm told that it reaches to more than 2.5 million people. And that's a considerable amount of people who are experiencing palliative care in all its various aspects and dimensions. So thank you for coming and enlightening us with not just your academic knowledge, but the vast experience that you've had in the field, not only in the hospital, but also in the rural areas. Thank you for being present here.
Thank you, Father.
Well, you was the opening batsman when we first began, and so this is another welcome back to you, Dr. John Tharakan. He's an alumnus of St. John's Medical College, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Harvard University. Now, Dr. John is a man of many parts. He's done aspects that have been able to be served on both national and international level for countries, helping them develop medical care and policies. He's also the promoter and founder of the BIV Foundation, which really enables and helps young people, especially in helping them to be global citizens and also preparing them for some of these Ivy League centers for excellence. He has, in many ways, reached out across the league, not just in the medical field, but in other areas as well. So he has many claims to fame, but one important one is the husband of Dr. Carolin. And so we are happy to have you both here on this panel today and to enable us to understand and to spell out some of the things which this very word palliative might seem like a mystery to some. So what does it really mean? How did it begin? Can you enlighten us a little bit about the history of what this palliative care is all about, Dr. John?
Thank you, Father Juvie. It's lovely to be back. And thank you for addressing all such very important and practical issues related to aging through Aging Gracefully. Like you rightly mentioned, palliative care as a word seems to be something very new, though certain aspects of palliative care, whether it's pain management, whether it's taking care of end of life, has been practiced in various forms from many, many years. Right? The person who's considered to be the founder of palliative care is Dr. Cicely Saunders. And it's a very interesting story, her whole life story itself, because initially, when she was young, she had a problem with her spine, right? And she wanted to become a nurse. But since her parents objected to it, she actually went to Oxford and began her studies. And then World War II broke out. So, against her parents' wishes, she went and joined nursing. However, she was not able to complete nursing because of the problem she had with her back. And she ended up studying to become a social worker. Now, while she was working as a social worker, she came across a patient who was around 40 years old. He was actually a Polish Jew immigrant who was suffering from cancer. And over a period of time, when they got talking to each other, they realized that there was a need to start something where people who are dying could die with respect and aware of the fact that they are dying and prepare themselves for death. So he made the first contribution towards a palliative care center. Now, after this, it so happened that Dr. Saunders' dad, as well as a very close friend of hers, passed away. And this is a period where she says she went through a stage of severe depression and self-reflection. And she felt the call to be involved in the area to help people die better. And her first thought was to actually go and continue doing nursing. And she happened to have a conversation with a surgeon who told her, you know what, if you want to be involved in a field like this, unfortunately, most people do not listen to a nurse. They tend to listen to doctors. So you'd rather go and specialize to become a doctor and then get into this field. Due to this, at the age of 33, she went back to study medicine. And that was a passion. And along this path, she, who was an agnostic in the beginning, found Jesus. And she says it felt like a light switch was flipped on. And it's from there that she said the values of respect, dignity, and a lot of the things we see in palliative care today originated at that point of time. So after she finished her medicine, she came back and she started the first palliative care center or hospice, which was St. Christopher's Hospice in 1967. And that was the beginning of palliative care as we know it today. And what is it that she did a little different from what was being done? Three main areas. One is she focused on the holistic care of the patient. And what we meant by holistic care is she said we need to take care of the physical, emotional, social, as well as spiritual aspects of the patient. Because there was a tendency to look at just one or two aspects of the patient, treat the physical aspect, treat the body, rather than look at a patient holistically. So that was one important difference in terms of how she addressed palliative care. The second area she played a huge role in was in the area of pain management. Because at that point of time, usually doctors prescribed pain medication when patients felt pain. And there was this line of thinking where they said, you know what, there is a tendency for patients to get addicted to painkillers. So it's better that we don't give too many painkillers. There was also the tendency of doctors to think that if we give too many painkillers to patients, their body will become resistant to the painkillers and you have to keep increasing the dosage of painkillers. And she was involved in some very interesting studies which proved that this was not the case. So these are some of the aspects of palliative care. And the third very, very important aspect of palliative care, which really changed a lot in the treatment landscape, was the strong belief that every patient should be treated with respect, with dignity, so that they die peacefully. So this is, in a very brief nutshell, the history of palliative care.
Thank you. That was brilliant because, just to bring the last 3 points that you so well gives you a window to understanding what it is all about. Holistic health, not just compartmentalized. This whole dimension of pain management, which in the past would be terrible. You would be screaming out in pain. At least there are measures of attending to it. And of course, at the heart of it all, the respect and dignity for the human person. I think that gives us a good framework now to look at other questions that we need to explore, particularly regarding palliative care. For that, we turn to the one who's hands-on in the field. So can you explain to us what really is palliative care?
Okay. Thank you, Father Juvi. Palliative care is a specialized medical care for people with life-limiting or life-threatening disease. I would say it is more of a philosophy than a specialized care or a specialty. Suppose you're diagnosed with serious medical conditions. For example, advanced cancer. It is a shock, not only to you, but to your family, all your loved ones. So there are two aspects to it. One is, the first one I would say, the disease modifying options. That is somebody who looks at it and say, even though it's a progressing condition, how can you reduce the pace? That means, you will look at the life expectancy and some kind of disease modification drugs like palliative, not even palliative, sometimes even chemotherapy, radiation to reduce the tumor size or to prevent the spreading. So that is one aspect that is called as the disease modifying treatment options. At the same time, there is a role for palliative care. Now, what is palliative care there? Is here you are looking at complex other needs. For example, when you are told that you have a disease which is you're going to die after some time and is going to be progressing, it brings into a lot of other things, physical, not only physical, but emotional, spiritual, different types of pains. So for that reason, palliative care brings expertise to breaking the bad news, how to cope up with the disease, and also how to understand the disease and treatment options at that point of time. There are also special expertise when these diseases, which is not a curable one, comes with multiple symptoms like pain, constipation, sometimes breathlessness. The management is slightly different from a normal, when it comes with a curable condition. So palliative care brings expertise to that as well. Now, another important aspect is the unit of care in other diseases is the person, whereas in palliative care, the unit of care is the family. In managing all these conditions and also understanding the disease, you take the family as well as the person into picture. So the WHO definition says palliative care goal is to reduce the symptoms or relief of symptoms and improve the quality of life of not only the patient, but the family members, and seeing the person as whole, not as one compartment. So that's the gist of it. And for common understanding, I would say, how do an oncologist look at this particular scenario and a palliative care specialist? Both have roles, but the oncologist will be dreaming about the tumor. It is 15 centimeter, I want to make it 5 centimeter. When it becomes 5 centimeter, you'd be thinking, how can I kill all the other cells, which is malignant cells, so that the person's life expectancy is becoming more. So the person will be dreaming about the tumor reducing and all those aspects. Whereas, what will be the dream of a palliative care specialist? The person will be thinking of the patient sitting with the family with no symptoms in terms of maybe talking, smiling, laughing, and also in terms of giving and accepting affection. So that is the difference.
Thank you. That really gives us a broader understanding of, there's something comes towards the end. But what's the origin or the root of that word palliative? Because it's not a word that we normally use. I mean, where did that word come from?
Yeah, the origin is cloak. That means, the meaning is patients when they're going to die, or anybody who's nearing death, they have the needs are very holistic. And if you want to give comfort, there should be something like a clock just put so that, the person feels comforted. And also it's not looking the person in silos or particular aspects, but as a person as a whole. So that's the origin of the word.
Thank you. That ties up with what you first began with, Dame Cicely Saunders, who said, the whole dimension of a holistic approach. And I think that's an apt word. Now, we use this word palliative care or palliative care centers. I've also heard the word hospice.
Yes.
Now, are they interchangeable? Do they use one another, or do they stand totally separate apart? How would you for the simple people like us, explain the distinction between a palliative care and a hospice care?
Yeah, thank you, Father. That's a very important question because it's also a big misconception that hospice means as an assisted care facility. It is a facility. But as I talked about palliative care, hospice is also a philosophy of care. So when the disease progresses, at the initial time, you will have the palliation and also in advanced cases, both palliation and disease modifying options. But as the progression happens, there would be one stage, the treatment become very burdensome and the person start expressing that I do not want to go through this process because somehow during this stage, the disease has become the center stage. You are all the time going to the hospital for chemotherapy, for radiation, your family members have taken off from so everything revolves around disease. It is tiresome, and after a point, the disease also has progressed and all these side effects starts kicking, and then you feel that it is all futile and you want to have more peaceful. That is where the whole concept of hospice comes, where you say the intent is not disease modifying but comfort, and the center stage will be taken by the person itself and the disease goes to the background and you start asking questions like, what would you like to do? Who do you want? Where do you want to stay? If something happens when you become very bad, or where do you want to go? Do you want to go to a hospital? So you sit with the family members along with the person and try, understanding the person's wish, and gives most important to the person and wish, and it's not a hasty decision where everybody together understands and does it. So when really towards the very end happens, everybody is very clear and prepared. So last 6 months, and this is particularly, that is where you say as hospice, that's the concept.
I think that's a wonderful takeaway you can take from that, because you said that this springs up from a philosophy. Yes. And more than it being disease-centered, yes, it's actually person-centered.
Yes. Yes.
So it's the person who has a disease, it's not the disease who's labeled as a person.
Yes.
And I think that's a good takeaway we can take from seeing the distinction, first of all, largely in palliative care, but also the contrast between an institution or a setting that provides this kind of a palliative care. Yes. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Father.
Let's hear something from Dr. John. How long does or can palliative care last?
It depends on various factors. For example, we've had patients who've been on palliative care for 10 to 15 years. At the same time, we've had patients who've been on palliative care for a couple of days. Some of the factors which determine how long it lasts could be the state of the disease, the sort of immunity status, the point of time at which they come for palliative care. And as they say, the length of our days are in the hands of the Lord. So palliative care, sometimes there is a myth around it. Right? There's a myth that if a patient starts palliative care, it means they're going to die. It's like a death sentence. But that's not necessarily the case. So it can vary. The duration of palliative care can vary widely.
Now, to provide something such as palliative care, it can't be done by one person alone. Like, I'm sure there will be a kind of a team of providers. So what resources can we draw on for particularly providing, especially since we're talking about this holistic care? How would you spell that out?
Right. So when you talk about palliative care can be provided in different settings. Right. Now, ideally, you want, as Father Juvi mentioned, what is called a holistic team. And generally, that team consists of a medical doctor who is ideally a specialist in the area where the patient is getting treatment. Secondly, you have a nurse. You would have someone who may be a psychologist. You could have someone from the community. And very, very importantly, you'd have a family member who's also part of this team which provides palliative care. A very important aspect, especially when you're talking about palliative care, remember, there's also a huge spiritual component to it. which is where, in the case of Christians, you have priests who are involved, and depending on the religion they come from, a religious person is also involved in this process of providing holistic palliative care.
I think, yeah, that really gives us a whole gamut. We may not always have the ideal team, but I think what you've suggested is insofar to get all of that, particularly the point of making sure a family member has to be involved. Otherwise, we might get the impression, let's leave it to the professionals, and but no, we're part of the process. So I think that needs to be underlined, and of course, the spiritual dimension, because sometimes you're reaching out to people of faith, other faiths, or no faith at all. And how important do we even reach out to them where they are rather than where we begin from? Because if respect and dignity of the person is what matters, I think all these are elements that need to be brought into play. Thanks for spelling that out for us, John. We also have some questions from the audience, so let's have that roll.
A question for Dr. Carolin. What are the benefits of palliative care?
Thank you for that question. It's a very important question. First of all, it's a very stressful situation for the patients as well as for the family. So what palliative care team does is first to ease out that tension, explain the disease, sit with them and listens to them. There's a lot of questions about how long, the treatment options and how the family has to cope with it. All those issues. The finance, that's another important thing people ask. So there is somebody to talk to. So that is a big comfort. And having been in this field, palliative care team has unique insights and they give very practical information which is useful. So it reduces the stress, that's the first part of it. Accept this disease condition. And then the next part is how to manage this patient. Now, they also come with unique expertise in disease management, especially the symptom management. So the complicated pain, which also has not only the physical component, but which Mrs. Lee Saunders calls as total suffering and total pain, which has a lot of emotional components. So they have the expertise to manage these specific pain conditions, and also access to morphine. So certain kind of pain, once you reach to that level, you need opioids, which is usually otherwise not accessible to people. So that is another advantage for the when you go into a palliative care setup. That reduces the symptoms, and also many times what happens is that the family, they can manage many of these symptoms. So we have ways in which the family is involved in giving even subcutaneous route is put, and they can give the injections by themselves. And you don't have to actually bring the patient every 4 hours or for injections to the hospital or a nurse to come there. So in our experience in Baptist, and 99% of even the last stages of cancer pain are completely managed. And people will say that our pain score is from 0 to 10 is almost 0 or 1. So there's a misconception that pain with cancer and severe disease cannot be managed. That's a misconception. So that is one aspect. Other than that, there are issues which affect dignity. There is bed sores, or sometimes it is like wounds where it's a big wound, or constipation or incontinence. All these things also, if you don't give right advice to prevent these, or when this happens, and advice to manage it, it actually robs the dignity out of the patient. So that is the other aspect, that when a palliative care team comes, that is the other aspect that happens. And cost, So the goal of palliative care is to avoid unnecessary hospital admissions. So we would actually give a lot of anticipatory advice in terms of, these are the preventive. You should not, you should be feeding the patient in this way so that the pneumonia is prevented, or, should change the position so that bed sore is prevented. So that prevents many things. And at the same time, sometimes if a person chokes or something happens, How do you manage? So that is called as anticipatory advice, so that you don't have to bring the person to the hospital. So that will reduce the hospitalization and so cost associated with it. And practically it's not possible. If you have to give pain medication or injections every 4th hour, can we bring the patient to the hospital? It is practically not possible. And also, the many things can be done at home. For example, if you want to, we teach the family members how to dress a wound, how to autoclave, sterilize things necessary at home. So these are things, how to change a colostomy bag, how to change the urine catheter, how to care for all these things so that infections can be prevented. So all these things, the family can be actively, take part in taking care of this patient. So that is very, very important. Another aspect I would say is about preparatory stage for the last days. So one of the things that we sit with the patients and the family and discuss is about if it becomes very worse, there's a breathlessness. What does the patient want, the person want, whether to be taken to the hospital? So most of the time what people say is that, I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to be at a place with my family in familiar surroundings and not with so much of tubes and things like that. So when this is asked and discussed and planned, it is very comforting to the person that, the person thinks that my autonomy and my wish will be regarded. That is first thing. Second, for the family members, there's no guilt. I'm not taking the person to the hospital just because I'm saving money or some other thing, but actually that was the person's wish to be with the family. So that is also very important. And by that, what we are doing, one is conserving the resources in terms of unnecessary wastage of money. Second, you're taking a person and locking the bed in the hospital, which could be used for somebody who can be, cured or something like that. So that is another way. So it's a conservation of resources. So these are the things, and if a person wants to do that, you can also make a will, advance will, comfort care, that is a possibility, and they can write it down. And we also have helped in assisting, adoptions and things like that, because if it's a single parent and they know they're going to die, something has to be done with the children. So because a palliative care team is going, they assist with all these aspects. So it's a complete closure where everybody feels more comforted during those days.
Thank you, Dr. Carolin. That was a wealth of information for all of us, and there's so much to unpack in that. You spoke about the advanced healthcare directives. We've done it in an earlier program, but this is another point that you brought in that's worthwhile highlighting. What I also liked is the different aspects of anticipatory care that you take, things that so many persons who are housebound or bedridden or in the later stages, whether it's bed sores or breathlessness, you've opened windows of possibilities. And the beauty of it is this is born out of your tremendous and vast experience. So thank you for enlightening us. And I just want to sort of emphasize a point that might be missed in the vast amount of information that you shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, you've addressed particularly the point from the medical dimension, dealing both with the patient and the family. But as we were talking about the holistic aspect, there is also the psychological and the social dimension as well. And so today, we are really happy to have in our midst Michelle Norman, who's the psycho-oncologist, which is basically a psychologist who particularly works with those afflicted with cancer, particularly in the last stages, because she's at a Bangalore Hospice Trust, Karunashraya in Bangalore, where she's leading the team over there. And so it would be good to get your insights, Michelle. So most welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Father Juvie. Yes, definitely when it comes to benefits of palliative care, the angle of psychosocial, spiritual, of what happens to patients as well as their families when there's a life-limiting illness. We look at it as psychologists or as mental health professionals from three aspects, right? So we're looking at it, one, about how is the family and the patient coping. So it could involve, what are some of the strategies they use, right? Are they able to cope, or is it becoming too emotionally overwhelming, right? It could also mean that sometimes they might benefit from a referral to a psychiatrist, which is something that most people don't want to do or want to go into, because, they might say that I'm not crazy, I'm just going through grief, which is true. But it's also the fact that because as a caregiver or as a patient, surviving or having to have some quality of life, there can be some benefit with having some mild dose of a psychiatric medication, right? So these are things that we do, and we follow them up from time to time, so that we're keeping a track of, what this distress they're experiencing is like, and trying to understand how they're coping. The second thing is looking at it from the point of how ethically we are making decisions and helping them feel empowered to make these choices. Like Dr. rightly mentioned about how do you want to go to a hospital? Will you land up in an ICU in an emergency? Where is it that you really want to be? Or would you like to stay at a hospice, which is a place like a home away from home, where family members can stay or come and visit, right? Where caregivers might often feel very guilty that they're leaving their loved one in an institution, right? So there's a lot of these factors which help, kind of move them away from making ethical decisions, because they feel like I need to care for them at home. But it's very possible that they don't have the financial resources, and ethically they might be even neglecting the patient because they're not able to access good enough pain control or symptom management, or even to just sit and have somebody to share and understand what they're going through. The third thing, I think, which we try and work with a lot, is that we are anticipating that caregivers are going to lose their loved one, right? So what we call as anticipatory bereavement or grief, right? So they are going to go into the bereavement phase soon after the death, right? What is going to happen to this family? How are we going to help them mediate conflicts that they experience? Because most of the time, and at least Indian families, as we know, there are bound to be disagreements about care. There are going to be issues with regard to finance, property. And these are things that can be very difficult to sometimes talk among each other in the family when there's already somebody they have to care for physically, right? So coming and talking about it and finding ways on how we can mediate, and not maybe our role doesn't become about solving the problems, but helping them make better decisions so that there is no real guilt, and they have the time to finish if there is unfinished business, and also honor and give that dignity for the wishes that the patient has. So from the psychological, social, spiritual aspect, these are some of the things. And lastly, it is also to tie them up with social support. So at Karnashraya, where we work, we have an organization who comes in and funds children's education. They called us Mitra Foundation, where they provide care or support for educational needs for bereaved. So once the main breadwinner of the family passes away, this organization comes in and funds, So there's a way for them to continue their education even though the parents or that one breadwinner is not there. So I guess these are some of the ways you can help them kind of integrate back into society once they have experienced something like this.
Thank you, Michelle, for that, giving us that important but sometimes forgotten dimension. That's the psychological and the social dimension. And you also mentioned the spiritual dimension, which we must not forget. It is to be offered whether it's in the home, whether they're in the hospital, or even in a hospice. You mentioned the place, but the first hospice I ever visited, was the first one in India for that matter, is Shanti Avedna Sadan. And I was called to minister over there. And I was really, really impressed because, first of all, that's open to people of all faiths. It's free, and so it makes it possible to see your loved ones live the last days and sometimes hours with dignity. Because the theme is, where there is love, there is no pain, drawn from St. Augustine, of course. And I think that's a reality. But as a religious chaplain or a person tasked, we must remember that this dimension needs attention too, because we will care for the physical, we'll care for the mental and emotional, we'll care for the social dimension, But the spiritual, whether one believes or not, is there. And how do we tap into that? How do we reach out to that? And therefore, the resources are always there. It's very fascinating, speaking from the Christian tradition, of which I am naturally most conversant with. It's there in other traditions too, but speaking into one of the important facts in the early Roman Empire, especially after, with the birth of Christianity, one of the reasons that a number of people were drawn to the Christian faith is when there was sickness or plague, the people were just abandoned and left. But the Christians went and reached out to them. So this sense of reaching out, because of the inherent dignity, every person, no matter where you come from, what you profess, is created in the very image and likeness of God. And it is that rootedness that and that was one of the reasons historically why many were attracted, like why the own family members were abandoning you. What is it that caused people of faith to reach out at risk to their own lives? And I think that is something that should cut across all faiths and religion, because that is our common humanity, but comes because we believe from the hand of God. And that's why it's important that the way those of us who practice it out, it comes out of a faith. Because this is not just humanitarian work. Some people dismiss Mother Teresa as humanitarian work. It was humanitarian work in the way she reached out, but she did it because she saw the face of God in each of them. And I think that is important to remember and not to forget, because there is this wonderful spiritual dimension that needs a little more development, and we'll come to that a little later. But I just wanted to bring this, since we are talking about the holistic benefits to availing of palliative care. Thank you for this dimension of the conversation that really keeps broadening the question for us to get a better taste and understanding of not only what it is, but how we can also avail of it. So a topic like this naturally invites a number of questions. And so we have a question from the audience.
So, Doctor, I wanted to ask, when does one avail of palliative care?
And thank you for that question. That's also a common question that people ask. How do you know that, I or my family member need palliative care? Is it the right time? So if you're dealing with a serious illness, at any time, palliative care can be availed. So there's a study which is done in Harvard Medical School, which is published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which said there were two category of patients. Both category, they were diagnosed with advanced non-small cell metastatic cancer of the lung. So what happened is that one group, the palliative care started whenever they were diagnosed, the first initial stage itself, and the other group when all treatment options were exhausted. And they looked at what is the effect. And what they have found is the group which had got palliative care very early, the symptom control, the psychosocial aspect, everything was much better. And also even the life expectancy actually doubled. So when we are talking about life expectancy, it's not that years, but it's like 2 months become 5 months or something like that. So there is definitely a role in early going to palliative care along with your disease modifying options, even if it's like a kind of advanced, even third stage cancer or something like that. That's one thing. Second thing is, even if people don't choose palliative care at that time, when the symptoms become more and more complicated, what happens is that chemotherapy, or another radiotherapy, or if it's constant dialysis or multiple organ failures, as time passes, it becomes overwhelmingly difficult to cope with it, and slowly pain and other things will start surfacing. And at this time, definitely the palliative care role become more and more important. And the rule of thumb, what we say is, if the person is bed-bound most of the time, at least 50% of the time, and progressing, and you don't see reversibility, that is, it's not becoming better, it's worsening day by day, that is the time you would consider, going for actively asking for palliative care if people have not mentioned. Another criteria is if there is repeated hospitalization. Again, that is not a sustainable thing because every third day going to the hospital. So that is where again you should look into the palliative care options. There are specific tools, like one of the tool is called as SPICT, called SPICT tool, which is Supportive and Palliative Care Indicators tool, which actually gives a detailed dimension for a common man to go through it into saying these kind of criteria and see whether your loved one or you yourself should avail palliative care. So this is what it is.
Thank you. That's helpful, and maybe for those who are watching, we could have the link also below so that they'll know what this PICT is all about.
Yes.
Because that's a standard thing that is accepted by so many.
Doctor, why can one avail of palliative care?
That's why I'm so happy that in conversations like these, we get a chance not only for ourselves, but to spread the word to others, to share this link with others, so that they begin to see that this is a dimension that's rather new, as you rightly pointed out, 1967, to live their lives with dignity and a wonderful quality of life. In other words, even as they are dying, they still really live.
You realize that at some point of time, the cure stops, the cure ends, but care does not end.
Palliative care always means that the patient is going to die.
Please tell me, they're begging, please tell me, is there something that is seriously wrong with me? And we have to say no.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Aging Gracefully, a talk show for evergreens. As we come to the end of this first part, we're grateful that you have participated in it, but please make sure that you like, share and subscribe. Let others also profit from this program. So here's me signing off from Aging Gracefully, a talk show for evergreens.